And welcome to another edition of Quoth the Raven. I'm your host, Louis Bright Raven. This is episode 11 or 13, depending on how you look at it. And the topic is Don't Steal My Comics, which is a topic that we'll get into just a little bit. But first, I want to get to our questions, but I have to respond to something here first. I apologize for that, folks. Okay. And let's see what we got here for questions this week. Our first question is from someone that I can't really name because the way they emailed me was rather nasty, but I paraphrased it. Do you really think that $7.99 comics is going to become the new normal? Isn't that just going to hurt sales even more? As I said, Peter paraphrased her from Ravenland because the actual email was too nasty. Last show, which was right before Thanksgiving, I believe, we did discuss $7.99 comics and how that's been trending for quite some time now. And whether or not it's going to become the new normal, I can't say. I really don't know. I think it depends on what retailers and readers are going to support. And the reality is that if you do it with the right amount of page content, format, and it's not something that becomes a repeat business product, that they've got to do them as self-contained one-shot impulse type purchases again. And I'll get into that a little bit later, that subject matter of versus the serialized, never-ending stuff versus one-shots and so on. We'll get to that when we talk about the digital downloading stuff. But the reality is, yes, eventually we're going to get there. And is that going to hurt the business? I don't know if it's going to hurt the business. It's just going to redirect where the mentality of the industry and the mentality of collectors should be headed. I would love it for society, or not society, but comic book fandom, to learn that you don't have to be, comic book addicts that buy every single issue of every single title type thing that you buy. There's a reason why we do trade waiting. There's a reason why we do the one-shot support as opposed to serialized formats and miniseries and so on. So, it's more of a situation of, are we going to shift over to that in the future, or are we going to continue to cling to our past and want to do it serialized? So that would be my response to that. Our next question is from Anonymous. Are the new COPPA regulations going to affect your podcast and what you can talk about? For those of you who don't know what the COPPA regulations are, there's some stuff going on. I guess it's through the FTC or something, where YouTube viewer programming for us is going to be supposedly restricted so that they can make stuff that's appropriate for kids or not appropriate for kids. And with comic books being the subject, all of us who are comic book creators, all of us who are comic book reviewers, artists who produce comic artwork online. We're all kind of in this limbo of what do you do, because certain characters are popular with kids, some aren't. Are you going to review? How are you going to review? A lot of stuff. I don't know exactly how it's going to affect what I do. I do know that when season 2, I call it season 2 of Quoth the Raven in January starts, I will do kind of a setup where I know what other episodes are for what intended audiences. That's kind of how I'll deal with it, but it's pretty much going to be the same, I think. And I don't know what I'm going to do about season 1 yet. I'm still on the go. I'm still trying to figure that out. I don't know if I'm going to just like download the videos and then edit them, or if I'm going to do some other stuff regarding that. I might even just delete all of season 1. So if you want to watch all of season 1, you may want to do it before the end of the year, or at least save them to watch them later or something. I don't know. Yeah. So that's kind of what's on my mind there. I've got too much going on my plate right now to officially make a decision on all that stuff just yet. So even if I don't remove them right away, there's a good chance that the season 1, Quoth the Ravens, the first 13 episodes, are either going to be removed and edited and replaced, or removed entirely at some point. So I don't know if that's going to happen right away or what yet, because I haven't really had a chance to sit down and look at them. So we'll see. Our next question. Have you watched Titans yet? Did you see, spoiler alert, another anonymous? No, I have not watched Titans at all. I don't have the DC Universe package for the internet or whatever. So I haven't seen it. I do know what you're talking about. I'm not going to spoil it for those who haven't seen the end of season 2. I haven't watched any of it, period. I will see season 1 later this month. I'm getting it for Christmas, basically. I'm getting that and Doom Patrol and a few other things. And I'll probably talk about that later at the end of the month after I've watched them or something like that. Okay. So that'll be that. Yeah, that's kind of the situation with all the DC stuff. I'm really, I don't have a CW affiliate locally anymore, and I don't have DC Universe, so I don't see any of that stuff. So, and I'm just not someone that goes hunting on it for online to watch stuff like that. So eventually I'll get around to it, but no rush. Next question. Not to go off script from the normal topics, but I was wondering what your thoughts on the college and NFL football seasons this year are. From Sport 1, Bionic 6. And the reason that I went ahead and added this into the conversation, because I don't normally talk about sports on the show, is because of the Sport 1 Bionic 6 name. I thought that was really cool. Yeah, I don't know if you guys remember the Bionic 6 cartoon from the 80s, but I thought that was cute. So to answer your question, Sport 1, with the college, I'm basically cheering for LSU as far as the ones that are going to go to the Final Four for the national championship. And I'm also rooting for my alma mater, Central Michigan, to win the MAC championship later this month. So that's pretty much my college. For football, I got to cheer on my namesake, the Ravens, I guess. But I'm really not that big a fan of NFL football like I used to be. Or really, I watch the Cubs when it comes to baseball, but sometimes the Tigers if they're doing well. But I'm not. The older I get with sports, I'm not really active participant in sports as I used to be. I've lost a lot of interest comparative than what I used to have in it, unfortunately. Let's see. Our next question. which brings us to the topic of our discussion tonight. Have you heard about the fight going on online about the illegal downloads and how they're killing comics? What's your take on this? From CJ in Flagstaff, Arizona. Well, obviously, I am familiar with what's being said on the show, or not on the show, but on the internet, at different websites, people on different blogs. And we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But my take is a little bit different than most, I think. So, why don't we go ahead and start with before we start on that, let's say real quick, if you have questions for the show, you can email them to me at Quoth the Raven, LBR72, gmail.com, subject matter or subject QTR questions. And please indicate whether or not you want your name and locale read on air. And since that is our lead in to our main discussion, we'll just go straight to that. Now, the first subject, or first thing that comes to mind when we talk about digital comics and illegal downloads is it's been going on for 20 to 25 years. It's not anything new, and this subject comes and goes in waves. And obviously, on the principle of the matter, we know it's illegal. We know it's wrong. There's no question of that. There's no argument as far as the so-called wrongness of it in terms of, are you committing an illegal act? Yes, you are. But there is a assumptiveness in the fandom and in the creative community, and it goes like this. If you happen to read comic books, then it can be safely assumed that you're a fan of the medium. That is a false assumption. Most people who read comics are not fans. They're not collectors. They're not like you. I'm going to list a ton of examples here. My father, he reads the comics I borrow from the local library, aka free comics, but he will not touch anything that I personally buy and bring home. He's got zero interest in the medium. He doesn't know he doesn't hardly know anybody in the business. He might know some of the creators in the business that he's met that are friends of mine at shows. He knows them when he sees them. But if I say, like John Wyko or Waukee, he's like, who's that? And I have to explain it to him. Or if I say Blonde, the only reason he knows Blonde the colorist is because Blonde lived with us for a little bit of time, years and years ago, when he was going through a rough patch. And publishers weren't paying Blonde what they owed him. Other than that, he really doesn't know the creators. He doesn't know the characters that much. I can literally give him a book to read, and within 24 hours of when he was done reading it, he can't tell you what the book was about. Technically, he's reading comics. Clearly, he's not a fan. They're just there to read for something to do when he's bored, and he has nothing. He's bored of doing crossword puzzles and word finds and other stuff. My mother is another example. Rest her soul. She was lead buyer representative for Toy City, chain of toy stores in the southeast part of the U.S. from 1977 to 1983. Now, as part of her job, she had to read every single comic there was at that time, whether it was Marvel, DC, Whitman, Archie, Atlas, whatever. And she read them for one, quality assurance, so to speak, or what was appropriate to be carried by the toy stores, and also to figure out which books got paired up with which toy products. In other words, when Marvel was doing Shogun Warriors and Godzilla and Battlestar Galactica comics, she made sure that the other managers of the 27 stores in the chain knew, hey, you put this book in with these toys and market them together, type sort of thing. Now, that's 6 years of that experience. She didn't bring home comics to me, even though she could have every week. She didn't. She didn't really promote the medium to me, per se. I might get some back issues, like 3 or 4 back issues in a row of a Batman or a Superman or something when it was my birthday or around Christmas time or Easter or something, as part of a package deal, but as the prizes, but or presents. But it was not a weekly or monthly thing, and yet she knew the material because she had to know the material for her job. When she left that job after my father retired from the military, we moved to Illinois. And she ended up working for a printer in Fox Lake, Illinois, that handled the overrun for the print runs on the comics that World Color out of Sparta, Illinois had. So she was doing the color corrections and printing for another 3 years until about 87. So for 10 years, she had her hands pretty much directly involved in some aspect of the comic industry. Read them, didn't really care about them. Just a second. There we go. That's a little bit better. Sorry, the light was bothering me a little bit in the corner of my eye. As I was saying, she was very much into the side of the business side of this industry, but she was not into the medium at all. And she didn't promote it to me. In fact, when I started getting interested as a collector was after she got out of that stuff. And I'm going to be honest, she was kind of disappointed that I got into it. She would prefer I'd stayed in prose fiction, which is where I started professionally. But I wanted to do comics. So she respected that. She supported it, but she was very critical, not of me so much as the industry and all the things that have gone on in the last 30 years, from the black and white boom and bust, the gimmick covers. Well, no, not the gimmick covers, but Marvel buying their own distributor and leading into the diamond monopoly. She knew all that was coming back around 88, 89. She had it all pretty much predicted. Maybe not in the exact order it happened, but she knew what was coming. And she was very much of the nature that, I'm not so sure you want to be here. And, it's kind of odd there. But yeah. So she was not a big fan of the medium. Hello to Ted and hello to John Norris. Good to see you, gentlemen. And so, she hated the comic industry, but and I think it probably, there's no doubt it colored her view of the medium of comics in a negative manner. Now that's just two people that be my immediate family. Now let's talk about normal society for a minute. I give away free comics at different times of the year, usually Halloween, but among other items I give out at Halloween. But I give out hundreds of copies of comics at Halloween. Every year, the same people will come to my house and ask where they can get more books. Even though I've put business cards with the names of the local comic shops on them, the phone numbers, the email addresses, all the contact information that you could possibly want with the comic in a bag. Here you go. So if you want more, you know where to go. A year later, they're asking me, where do I get more comics? Well, the comic shops are there. Clearly, they're not making the effort to look for it. They love it when it's free, when it's given to them for Halloween, but are they really fans of the medium? Do they really love comics enough to want to go do what you have to do to be what you guys consider, well, anybody who reads comics does this. Well, it's not true. The reality is you give it to them free, they have an interest. They got to go buy it, they don't. That's the truth. And that's something that we as an industry have generated, that attitude. And then we've got people, well, he's right here, John Norris. Hello, John. John's what you call a lapsed reader, someone who used to buy comics all the time, used to go to the comic shop every week. But for whatever reason, in John's case, he got married to someone who didn't really want to buy comics anymore, and he stopped, and that's a very common practice. But other people just got fed up with comics, or life got in a way, and they moved on for a little while, and they never come back to the market. And John can attest to this. I'm constantly giving him free comics, whether it's the free comics from the Free Comic Book Day, whether it's books that I've bought that I have extra copies of. Here, check this out, see if you like it. The reality, or it's stuff that's in my collection that I don't want anymore, but I think he or some other person will enjoy. It seems to me that while they're happy to get the comic to read, they're not reading them because their interest in comics has been killed to a degree, or maybe entirely, in the sense of the immediacy of it. John can attest to this. I ask, hey, what'd you think of the story I gave you? And he'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get to that yet. I didn't read it yet. And I'll be like, dude, that was 6 months ago. What's going on? And it's not necessarily his fault. He's just busy. He does a lot of things now with his time that are not comics related. And he just, it's not that he doesn't enjoy the medium anymore. It's that life has changed. And he doesn't have that sense of immediacy that what we consider fans of comics have. So he's just one example, but there's literally about 4 dozen people I know who are just like him, who have this sort of thing going on where they might go to the comic shop and wants to get one book, something, but they can't get back into it. And hello, kitty cat. He wants attention. But when you have an audience base, because I know dozens of them, but there's literally hundreds of thousands of readers like this who have left the standard of buying regular comics on a weekly basis. He wants to get on the back of the chair now. How nice. You want everybody to take a look at you midnight? Come here, boy. Come here. Come here, baby. Yeah, he just wants attention. He don't want to watch a football game with my dad. Anyway, we've got that many readers that are who have lost interest in the weekly format. It's very difficult to get them to come back, and part of that is because a lot of them left when comics were a certain price, and now the prices are much higher. Are those people going to go online and get a digital download, whether it's legal at Comixology or Marvel.com or wherever, or are they going to go illegal? Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think they're doing either for the majority of them. But if they are doing the illegal, then the question becomes, why would they do that when it costs more time and resources to seek that out and find it and download it than it does to simply go on Amazon or go to Marvel.com or Comixology.com and pay for the download or pay for it to be shipped to you? Or Things from Another World, or any of these things that are legitimate. So I seriously question whether or not the numbers I've heard bandied about by different people about these illegal downloads are quite what they seem. But here we are with people making these claims that there's 100,000 illegal downloads for a book like Jim Zupkovich's Champions, or whatever Donnie Cates is doing. I guess he's doing Cosmic Ghost Rider or something for Marvel or something. And I'm thinking, I don't buy that. And here's why. Number one, if there were that many downloads, I think it's a safe bet that Disney and Marvel's attorneys would be chasing that dragon and slaying it. There's no way on this earth that if you've got literally 5 to 10 times the number of your actual paid readership, according to your diamond numbers, who are illegally downloading this and reading it illegally, as those who are paying it, you're not going to go after them and shut that down. And they're not doing that we know of. Now people are going to say, well, it's so difficult to track people down on the dark web and all this other stuff. But the reality is, if it's so easy for people to download it and find it and download it illegally, it's easy for them to find the people who are doing it and bring them to justice, if that's really the case. That's just how I see it there. So that makes me a little bit, I don't know. Which brings me again to the second point. If you're not willing to go to the store, you're not willing to shop online and have it delivered to you, you're not willing to pay for a download off of a legal site, you're not willing to go to the library so as to get the book free to read and then return it. Does anyone, I want you to think, if you're not willing to do that, why would you be willing to take the time and resources to go hunt online to download it illegally? There's all these options here that are legal for acquisition, but you choose to do this. That doesn't quite add up, does it? When you stop to think about it. It costs more time and resources to hunt this stuff down online for free than it does to simply order the books through normal channels, whether it be online or through a comic shop or a bookstore or wherever. So if this is happening, and everybody's saying it is, you have to wonder why this audience base can't be connected with and brought into the paying fold. And we're going to get into that in just a little bit. But here's the thing. We got people like Jim Zupkovich. Now, Jim was just brought into this most recent event tangentially because some people misquoted him or quoted him out of context on the web about stuff, because his Champions book from Marvel was canceled, and Champions was one of the books that supposedly had a bunch of downloads beyond what the sales were, and that's why it was canceled. But there's something about Jim that people forget. For 5 years, he did a book called Skull Kickers at Image. For 5 years, that book made no money, by his own admission. In fact, he practically brags about it on his blog site. How from 2010 to 2015, that entire run that he didn't make any profit. Now, obviously, there was a profit. There had to be a profit somewhere. Otherwise, Image would have said, no, we're not publishing anymore. But what I think he means is he had to reinvest all the monies that were earned off that book back into keeping the book in publication for that 5-year period. And there was no, they weren't in the black in terms of getting himself cash or whatever after paying all the business expense that is comics. And that's fine. But when you do that and you talk about it and you're telling the fans about the business side of comics and that you're not making any money on this book, but you did it for 5 years, not earning any money. You can't turn around and then say, well, it's not fair that you guys are downloading this book illegally that I got going at Marvel that I was writing, that I got a paycheck from Marvel up front. You got paid, Jim. You got yours on that one. You didn't get as much as you may think you want or deserve because you didn't get the royalty check on the back end. Well, let's be honest. Royalties can be cut any damn way they want by the publisher. There's no guarantee you would have ever seen a cut of any type of royalties past a certain point anyway, or up to a certain point. And we don't know what those numbers are. If you tell me what the numbers are, does Marvel give you a set number? If you sell X number of copies per issue, you're going to get Y dollars as a royalty? I don't think so. So I'm a little bit, and at the same time, he did that book Skull Kickers for 5 years. And this is, I'm quoting him, Skull Kickers wasn't really profitable during its run, but it did get my name out to a much wider audience and opened the door for some of my early work for hire comic writing projects. 19 issues of Pathfinder at Dynamite, and then my D&D work for IDW. Between those two property brands, he's probably done around 50 issues worth of paid work. I don't know how many issues there were of Skull Kickers because I didn't follow Skull Kickers. But again, assuming that the contracts are what they are, I don't know what his contracts were for those companies, but I'm assuming there was a script rate. You got paid. So presumably he got royalty checks on those as well, if whatever the sales for those books were. But he goes on to say, in relation to his Image book, every 6 months, I'd receive an accrual statement from Image that outlined how deep the financial hole was. They could see we were slowly digging ourselves out with digital and collection sales, but the numbers didn't seem to be in our favor. When the series wrapped up in mid-2015, I resigned myself to the fact that Skull Kickers as a whole would probably never do better than break even if it did propel me forward in terms of my writing career, unquote. Now, all the way through up to about 2017, mid-2017, he used to sit there and say, yeah, I did this book for no money. I did this book for no money. I did this book for no money. Finally, the truth came out in 2017, and the sell-through on the trades and the digital downloads from Image and other legal channels for the book finally got the book back into the black and turned him a profit margin, finally. But I did the book for 5 years and it didn't make me a profit. Image sales numbers prove it. But that's got nothing to do with illegal downloads, Jim. It has far more to do with Image Comics and Diamond Comics distribution sucking at marketing and distributing your product. That's the truth. As I said a few minutes ago, Jim did earn some income off that book. He just reinvested it back into the book to keep it going. And that's fine. That's a reasonable business decision. But that's not the same as saying you didn't earn a single penny for 5 years. That's not saying that you did it for the love. It's not the same. Because you had something coming in. Just because you reinvested it back into the product doesn't mean you didn't earn it. So when you present yourself as willing to do your comic for no pay, then you don't get to turn around and complain when you got paid a straight up salary to do a book and the book's not being downloaded because your audience base is going to say, well, if you're willing to do that book that you own the rights to for free, why should you care? You don't even own the rights to these characters from Marvel. I know what I'm saying isn't popular. I know people aren't going to like it. It's controversial, but it's the truth. It's a hard truth. Now, if there's 100,000 illegal downloads of Champions that cost him this book, and that's why Marvel canceled it, I don't buy it, but let's just say it is. Do you really think it's the fault of the people who download it, or do you think it's Marvel Comics' fault for not properly marketing, not properly distributing, and not making that product at an affordable price point available to the general public so that people would buy it? I say it's the latter, not somebody doing an illegal download. And the reason I say that is because I've seen just as many creators and fans alike complaining to those of us who go to the library to borrow trade collections. Now, these are copies that have been legally purchased, so the creators got their damn cut. We're just as guilty of cheating the creators as those who illegally download the comics, according to these people. They'll attack me and say, God damn it, BR, if you want to go to the library and read it, you should just buy yourself a copy. Fuck you. I'm going to tell you why. If I actually spent the money on the stuff that I borrow from the library, which is mostly the Marvel and DC schlock, that I don't want, don't like, but I have to buy it, or not buy it, but I have to borrow it. Because everybody tells me that I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not a legitimate source of knowledge in the comics industry if I don't read the modern stuff that's coming out. Okay, I'll go to your stupid library and borrow it for free then. If I spent the money, though, to get that content, I'm seriously terrified of what I might do to the creators and the editors who enabled them to do that product. That's how much I hate the stuff. I look at it as, well, at least by not paying for it, I can just blame the fans for nagging me about having to read the stuff instead of just taking my word for it and understanding that, yeah, I got better taste than you. That's why I don't read this stuff normally. Because, you know, having the common sense to not buy something you don't want isn't validation enough for you to prove that I know what I'm doing, apparently. So, okay, we do that. What happens when I go to the library and I borrow these trades? Do any of these books ever convince me that I'm wrong, that I should buy a copy for my collection? In 7 years, there's been one book, and that was the first trade collection of Thor for the Jane Foster Thor, Thunder in Her Veins by Jason Aaron and Russell Dauterman. And I have that book. But guess what? I didn't pay for it in full price. I got it at Ollie's for $4.99. That's another thing people bitch about. We go to Ollie's. So, you know, hey, you know, you bought the book for $2.99. You bought the book for $3.99. Why don't you just buy it for normal price? Well, that's another topic that we can get to a little bit. But this is comics. Conversely, I've got a lot of friends who are professional writers in the science fiction community, fantasy fiction, horror fiction communities. They don't come and bitch at me when I borrow their book from a library and say, hey, you should have bought a copy. Why'd you go to the library and get it? Only the comic readers do that. You got to ask yourself why. I'll tell you why. Because the creative industry, the marketing, and the distribution in this industry is on life support. We've got this incredibly insular attitude that we practically refuse to get our product before the mass audience. We insist that we go through basically one channel, that being Diamond Distribution. We got 2,100 comic shops in across North America, according to recent released documentation from Diamond that wasn't supposed to be released to the public, but it was accidentally. So if you go to Comic-Con and you read the numbers of the month and what the top 300 sellers of the books are and what their sales were, and you divide that by 2,100, you can figure out the average comic books being sold per store, per the total sum of stores. Now, granted, some are in rural communities. They're not going to have the population base. They're not going to order a lot of books. You got ones that are in major cities that are going to be ordering hundreds of copies versus some that are going to be ordering no copies. Mm-hmm. But when you start doing this and you start looking at the numbers, even your top selling books are only selling 5 or 10 copies a store. 5 or 10 copies per store. When you balance it out for the median of 10K, that's like the whole 65% of the industry and the top third of the industry, a top 35 books, maybe the top 100 books, if you're lucky, get more. Mm-hmm. We release over 1,200 comics a month. So we're talking like 1 out of every 12 books actually makes money above 10K. Are you really telling me it's because people are downloading comics? Or is it because we're failing as a market to properly place these products where normal people can find them at a price point they can afford, where they're going to be interested in purchasing our product? I say it's the latter. What do you guys think, people who are watching? Say something. Let me know. Because I'm speaking. You may disagree. While I'm waiting on somebody else to say something, I want you to think about another thing that's similar to this, the music industry. Remember how you 40-year-olds and maybe even your people in your 30s might remember this. We all used to take blank cassette tapes on our stereos, put on the radio and record music instead of buying the record, buying the album on CD, cassette, vinyl, doesn't matter. You were stealing. How about all you people who burned CDs all throughout the 90s and early 2000s? You were stealing. There's no, you were. We all were. I do not remember public service announcements from music entertainers on television. I don't remember them going to court saying, hey, all you people out there doing this, you're wrong and you're thieves and you're killing my business. The way I see it in comics. It wasn't until digital that stuff started. And that's because digital meant there was no tracker. There was no system by which anybody can make any money except the people doing the trading. And that's why people are complaining in the comics industry more than anything else. There's no we have means to track the dark web to see how many illegal downloads there are. But for whatever reason, even though there's these hundreds of thousands of illegal downloads, nobody seems to think that they can go after the people who are putting this stuff on. I don't know. But in comics, the same practice that we did with music, whether we made mixtapes, we burned CDs for each other, whatever, whatever. In comics in the 80s and 70s, 80s, early 90s, it would be akin to what we did when we each bought different comics in our little collective groups and then swapped each other's books. Oh, you want the FF? I'll take the X-Men. You want Batman? I'll trade you the Spider-Man type thing. I don't remember the comic industry screaming up and down with their arms waving in the air. Hey, you can't do that. You guys, well, you all got to buy the same issues. You can't be trading back and forth. You can't be doing that. Our sales are down because of that. That's what the people who are downloading these books and putting them online are telling you they're doing. Is it what they're doing? To a degree, yes, but it's beyond that, because now instead of sharing just one-on-one, you're sharing with however many people who are going to download it, obviously. But if they're not going to do that, and we've got an audience base and a youth base, because everybody says we want to get more youth into comics. Well, the youth aren't even into comics because we've got everything digitized. They're in digital land. They're on cell phones with their face in their phone. They're in their iPads. They're into this stuff. So they're going to go to digital comics anyway, whether it be webtoons, whether it be Comixology, whatever. Of course, they're going to go where they can find something for free. Because the internet, the attitude of the internet is, hey, I paid for the internet, everything on the internet's free. That's another factor that people are not taking into consideration. But they're saying this is hurting the business. They're saying this is what's killing our industry. Okay, if that's what's killing our industry, how come all these guys that I know, whether it's Ted, whether it's Aaron Lopresti, whether it's Carl Kiesel and Tom Grummett, Section Zero, whether it's Ethan Van Sciver, whoever, we're all going, putting on our Indiegogo boots, getting on stage, and doing our Kickstarter proposals and getting and marketing ourselves. Why are we doing that? Because a lot of these books were through Diamond at one point. Not everything, mind you, but a lot of them were. Section Zero was through Diamond before it went. Todd DeZago and Craig Rousseau's For Happenouts went through Diamond, through Dark Horse and Image before it went digital and downloads and buying stuff online. Gladstone's School for World Conquerors, which we'll talk about next week. Our special guest is Armand Villavert Jr., the artist. We might also have the writer, Mark Andrew Smith, in the house, hopefully. We'll talk about that next week. But those guys went through Image, through Diamond. Not enough sales to support it. They had to go over to Indiegogo, Kickstarter land to make a living, get these books sold. Is this because of illegal downloads? Or is this because Diamond in the retail market isn't handling what they need to be handling and helping us and working with us to build these markets so that people will come buy the product? And we got a complaint from the fans from this very topic. I've seen it by 4 different people. One on Bleeding Cool, one on Comic Book Resources, one on, Comic C Chat, where they started blaming Comicsgate. They started blaming all of us who are doing these comics through Kickstarter or Patreon or Indiegogo, that we're hurting the business, that we're the ones killing comics in the market for Diamond and for the retailers. Guys, we gave Diamond that opportunity first. We gave the retailers an opportunity first. The reason we're over there is because they failed us. Sorry to be harsh about it. The answer isn't illegal downloading, is hurting comics. What's killing comics is a lack of business sense, a lack of proper marketing, lack of proper distribution, getting our products in a proper format where we teach our audience base, the new upcoming audience base, that they don't have to be week to week, month after month for the rest of your life. It's not a lifestyle. We need to get comics back to where they used to be, when comics were a impulse purchase without further commitment. You buy it once, you got your self-contained story, which is why I say the $7.99 product might be better down the road. It might be the way to go. It might be paying $7.99, but you got more page count, you got a complete story. As long as it's self there, maybe we can get people to buy that. I don't know. If you're going to do a $2.99 comic, a $3.99 comic, at 22 story pages, that's fine, I guess, but you got to give them a complete story every time. It's got to be short fiction, self-contained. You can't do this serialized chap fic, because what's going to happen is exactly what happened with my parents, and my mother especially, back in the 70s and 80s, where she wouldn't. This is why I wasn't a collector of comics in that era, was because she would see the stories that weren't self-contained and say, well, there's no guarantee. Now, yes, I got a guarantee I get the books because I'm running the store, but I didn't even necessarily get the books for their toy store. I used to get them off the newsstands a lot. If I wanted something, I'd be at the PX and, well, okay, you want a Batman comic? Okay, fine, type thing. When I got the back issues was when she had a back stock that wasn't selling usually. So if she was doing that, what are parents today doing? Now, parents today aren't necessarily as interactive and knowledgeable as my mother happened to be at the time when I was a young kid. My mother was very invested and very proactive, not just in terms of comics for me, but she was proactive in my sports activities. She would get the sports equipment for the teams. She would do a lot of things through her toy store. She'd get, like the baseball gloves and the baseball bats for the teams and stuff like that. And she'd get soccer balls for the soccer team and stuff. Not all parents can do that, obviously. But she knew the content, and she knew whether it was appropriate or whether she felt it was appropriate. We need to be able to get that kind of thing going on for everybody, so that people aren't thinking that comics are just for kids. That there isn't just superhero comics. This is what is killing comics, the fact that we have not done this, and we don't do it consistently. People say we've done it a lot. You do it periodically. I do it periodically, but none of us as a whole collective are doing it all the time. It's a never-ending battle. Hence why I'm wearing the Superman shirt. It's a never-ending battle against ignorance, a never-ending battle against getting people to understand what our medium is and where to get it at an affordable price. So that's what I got to say about that subject right now. Now, that doesn't mean that I approve of people downloading comics. I don't. And not downloading comics illegally. Qualify that. You can go to your Comixology. You can go to, Marvel.com, DC.com, wherever it is. You can get your digital download comics from legally and get whatever you want. Creators get their cut. That's all that matters, I guess. But I want you to remember one thing: for all that stuff that's out there, that's illegal, through those channels, there's all these digital comics out there that you can get for free. They're put out free by the creators. I used to do it myself back in the late 90s, rather. I did 2 titles: Space the Alien and Larry Livewire, from 98 to 2001. But there's all kinds of digital comics out there, whether it's through webtoons. John says he had to step away from his computer a bit. That's fine. John, The thing is, though, sorry, I lost my train of thought. That happens sometimes. The amount of comics that are done for just digital and don't have a print version, don't have any of that stuff that we can get for money, is so much larger than the diamond market. And that stuff is downloadable, is downloaded as well from comics readers. And they're saying, well, I can get all this stuff over here for free. Why do I got to pay you for yours? Well, it's because it's a brand name. It's Batman, or it's Marvel, or it's DC, or it's Star Wars, or whatever. And so we are now in an age where we don't need to be talking about illegal downloading as much as restructuring digital comics as a monetized structure for all of us, not just the stuff from Marvel or from the big name megacorps, but all these people that have never even been part of the diamond market because Diamond doesn't want them in. And if Diamond doesn't want them in, the retailers don't want them in. This is the stuff that affects independent comics. This is the stuff that if we're going to do and talk about that sort of thing, then how do you want to propose monetizing this stuff? Well, we're doing it through Kickstarter, Patreon, Indiegogo, and people are complaining about it. They're saying that that's hurting the direct market retailer. Well, hey, direct market retailer has had 20 years to get themselves together as a collective and tell Steve Jeppy shove it and build distribution channels to get that other content in their stores if they wanted it. They've got Peter Simeti and Alterna Comics trying to do comics at $1.50, $1.95 today through Diamond. And what are they telling them? They're telling them the books are too cheap. They're not making enough profit margin. Do something to reformat it, make it a $3.99, $4.99 book because I'm not making enough of a cut. They're not ordering those $1.50 to $1.95 books for their stores because they're not making enough profit per unit. That's the reason. No other reason than that. Because they're terrified that if they actually ordered that $1.50 to $1.95 product, that it might actually sell for them and that those higher priced books aren't going to sell for them as a result. We can't do that. What we need to be doing instead is embracing that alternative brand in that respect and looking at Marvel and looking at DC and looking at these other companies and saying, hey, if he can do it at $1.50, why can't you? Because I'd rather have a comic publisher sell 200,000 at $1.50 than sell 20,000 at $5. Because that means there's more readership. That means there's more potential to get an audience out there and embrace the greater scope of our general public than we have right now. I'd rather see a mentality generated in our fandom again where we don't have this over-exaggerated hold on a second. John just posted something and he distracted me for a second. You're right, John, and I will get to what you said in just a second. we've got this sense of over expectation due to the amount of money we spend on these books. And it's not unjustified. I mean, if we're going to spend $4, $5, $7, $10 a book, we should get our money's worth. And when you're competing against other forms of entertainment for the same price to get you a longer entertainment experience per se, I can understand the argument. I'm going to go into what John said regarding what I said about John earlier. I once only wanted to read comics to the point of neglecting my music. I'm sure you remember that I used to write comic reviews. Absolutely, I remember that, John. You used to write for Comics in the Classroom, if I remember correctly, and you promoted a lot of comics that were for all ages. And yes, I don't know if you only wanted to read comics. I don't know if you were really neglecting your music or your other career per se. I think it was just I think at that time in your life, you didn't know where to direct your musical talents. You didn't have an outlet for it as much, I think, was part of it. I think you discovered those outlets a little bit later, and once you discovered it, I think that helped you a lot. John then replied, then I got married, and yes, my wife thought I was spending too much time and money on comics. And he concluded that the quality of his musical performances was not as good because he was spending his time reading comics and not practicing. And you and Tracy, our friend Tracy Hollingsworth, are going to have to have a conversation about that. Because, I mean, Tracy has 4 jobs, including being a drummer and a music teacher, and he still finds time to read his comics. So I don't know. I think a lot of it in that case really had more to do with your ex-wife. And I don't want to get into that because it's personal. That's not something we need to talk about publicly here on the forum. I wasn't trying to bring you out personally when I was doing that, John. You just happened to be an example that was easy in my head. That could be applied to literally Sean Martinez. It can be applied to people who actually used to run comic shops. Both our friends Susan and Angela, who used to run Silver City Comics here in Columbia. Neither one of them read comics anymore now that they're not working in a business. They're burned out on it. Just no. More interested in the relationships outside of comics. And yes, now, as John says, he does church music, weddings, funerals. He does theatrical work, both as a music director and a performer. And he gets paid to do those things, whereas comics obviously didn't pay you to read them per se. I don't know if you were paid I don't think you were paid for Comics in the Classroom when you were doing reviews or not. But yes, music has always been your first love, and that's great. But like I said, that's something you and Tracy and I need to sit down and have a lunch or a dinner sometime and talk about that, because obviously music is Tracy's first love, and yet he still has time to work as a drum teacher, a drummer in a band, session musician, and work in a music studio. He works in a comic shop. So I mean, I think he might disagree with you a little bit, just a little. But yes, I think there's more to it than that, though. what I was getting at was a lot of people when they get married, your life changes, and our spouses who are not necessarily into comics, if they're not into comics before we marry them, we change and we lose interest in it because we got focused on what is necessary for the family more so than what ourselves. That's what I was getting at, John. Just to be more clarified of what I wasn't blaming you personally on that. But yeah, so that's your story, and it is worth, and you didn't need to defend yourself, but I'm glad you did. If you felt the need to, that's fine. So we're going to close on that subject now, because I don't know if John had to take a time away from theater because he was probably a little bit mad because he thought I was making an example of him possibly. And if that was the case, I do apologize. I wasn't making an example of you specifically. I was just trying to get that point of when people's lives change in that nature. A lot of times comics goes by the wayside. Mm-hmm. So we're going to get on and to the reviews for the week. And there we go. And we'll start with back issue number 117. Publishers Tomorrow's Publishing. Writer and artists are various because this is a regular magazine that explores the history of comics each month, or each issue, I should say, with a dedicated theme. Now, in this specific issue, it happened to be characters that were introduced to temporarily replace the regular heroes in their books. The cover has Beta Ray Bill in place of Thor. They covered Cody Rhodes, not Cody Rhodes, Jim Rhodes. Cody Rhodes is a wrestler. Jim Rhodes, Rhodey, also known as War Machine, who replaced Tony Stark as Iron Man originally in the Iron Man comics. They talk about Azrael replacing Batman, a few other things in this particular issue. I happen to get back issue, not every single issue, but if it happens to be a book that has a theme or a topic of discussion, that I go ahead and get that, and I enjoy that. The book is $9.95, and they're usually around 90 to 120 pages, if I'm not mistaken. And it's a good history article. There are interviews with the creators, and there are articles about the history of the characters. And for people who are interested in that sort of thing, I think it's a very good subject, good title and order. Just to clarify, John says he didn't get paid for the comic reviews for Comics in the Classroom, which is a shame. You should have. You did some really nice work on that back in the day, John. But I would recommend this magazine for really anybody who's interested in the history of comics. They do a really good job of interviews and talking about the history of the business and the history of the comics characters in this magazine. And I recommend it for ages 12 and up. And I give it a 5-star for this particular issue. But usually I do, like I said, I don't get every single issue of back issue. I usually get them depending on what the subject matter is. Pardon me. Throat. Need to get me a drink here. But you can see it's quite a large edition magazine. I also happen to have recently gotten 113, which was about the Batman movie 30th anniversary. Has interviews with different people who were involved in the production, and with Denny O'Neil and Jerry Ordway, who did the comic book adaptation. They also talks about Mindy Newell's Catwoman, Grant Morrison and Dave McKean's Arkham Asylum, different stuff like that. And then I also got 115, which is about Dreadstar, which was a very popular series by Jim Starlin. And the general topic of themes is sci-fi superheroes. So you had different characters like Starman, which was not the Starman with the rod, per se, that you guys might know from the Justice Society. It is that one, but it's also a different one. I can't remember the guy's name, but it was Jem, son of Saturn, is mentioned. They got an article on that. Another Walt Simonson character, Justice Peace, which is kind of a knockoff on Judge Dredd that appeared in the Thor comics. Some other stuff are in here as well. So, things like that I do find appealing, and I think if you're interested in comics history, Back Issue magazine is probably the magazine to get. No offense taken. I appreciate that, John. Now let's get on to our next subject, our next book for reviews. And it's Heart Attack, #1, which is $3.99. Publisher is Skybound Image Comics. The writer is Sean Kittleson. The artist is Eric Zawadzki. Colorist is Michael Garland. The letterer is Pat Brousseau. The genre is science fiction superhero. What it's about: in the future, all diseases are removed via genetic therapy and manipulation. As a result, people start gaining superpowers, and they are called variants. And as such, they are pursued by the government and denied their human rights because they're turned into weapons of mass destruction or whatever. Can Charlie and Jill survive being pursued by a government and society that both hates and wants them for their powers? Recommended for X-Men fans, ages 15 and up. I gave it 4 out of 5. I'm going to show you a little bit of the artwork. And you really can't get a good close-up on this, unfortunately. I'm going to try to see if I can expand it a little bit more. Nope, it's not going to let me do it. Hate when it does that. Anyway, like I said, fans of X-Men, it is X-Men. I mean, the reason I got a 4, I'm kind of being generous. I probably should have given it a 3, to be honest, but I'm being generous because the first issue, I want to see where it goes. I'm hoping it goes a little bit more original. Art's good. Zawadzki's doing a good job of it. In this particular thing, the cops stop this girl, and you see her hand is glowing. In a second thing, in the second panel on the left. The reason it's glowing is because her power gives her the ability to put like artwork on a page or something like that. And she can't turn it off until she's actually projected it out. So they shoot her. And then the other guy escapes. In this scene, the guy that escaped is getting beat up by a jerk in a dance club, and the girl has what they call tactile telekinesis rather, where I guess she can move little things with her mind or whatever, but not that strongly. And she tells the guy to leave she tells the bruiser to leave the guy alone. And she's like, "Oh, what are you going to do about it?" And they touch hands, and then she sends him flying. And I didn't scan the next page, but she sends him flying like all the way across the room into the speakers for the DJ set and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. If you're not familiar with what you're looking at, that is swiped right off the X-Men. It's Fenris. It's the Von Strucker kids from the Gifted TV show on Fox. I mean, that's what it is. That's a little bit off-putting to me. That's why I'm saying maybe it should only be a 3 instead of a 4, but I'm being generous. Variants are clearly okay, they're genetically modified, and then they get the powers. Okay, fine. It's still mutants. It's still clearly an X-Men knit. It's an X-Men riff. But the X-Men have been kind of, I don't know. Let's just say that to some of us, the X-Men aren't the X-Men anymore. So if you want to try something new that's in the same vein but different in terms of you don't have all those character properties, you only got one book to read, this might be a reasonable selection for you. And that's part of why when I saw the cover, I was like, wait a minute, that's the Von Strucker kids. Well, I guess I better check it out and see what it is and see where it's going. Because, I mean, I don't, it's not, there's not enough in the first issue for me to say it's not going to turn into something different. I'm hoping it does. But, so far, it's doing okay. Our next book is Machine Gun Wizards. And it's by number 4, $3.99 by Dark Horse Publishing. Now, you might be a little bit confused. Why does it have that banner across the top of it covering the logo? That's because this book was originally called Tommy Gun Wizards. And the first 3 issues were Tommy Gun Wizards. And for some stupid political reason, I don't know what, they decided that Tommy Gun was some sort of non-PC thing or whatever, and they had to change the name. So that's why they covered the Tommy Gun and just put Wizards there. And this is the 4th issue and the end of the story arc, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it is. So the next story arc, next miniseries they do will be called Machine Gun Wizards. Anyway, the writer is Christian Ward. The artist is Sammy Cavella. The colorist are Christian Ward and D. Cunniffe. The letterer is Hassan Atzman El How. And the genre is alternate history, fantasy, and crime, noir. This is basically, Prohibition era Chicago. And instead of alcohol and drugs, magic is prohibited as well, and that's what they're fighting over. And then this particular issue, the battle between Al Capone and Elliot Ness is concluded. Only there are other forces at play, and who knows who's on whose side. We see a little bit of Al Capone's history and stuff, but the police here are a little bit overwhelmed by what's going on. As you can see, there's a floating building and a floating car going up to the floating building. The redhead that you see in this particular, she's in a cab with a guy. Oh, it's not a guy, it's a Gollum construct. That's her bodyguard. Oh, sorry. Thought I had a little bit more. I did. ultimately, that rat shows up as being the person charging the bomb at the end of the story. A little bit of a spoiler warning. But if you haven't been reading the story, it's not that much of a spoiler. um, so, again, I would say I gave it a 4 out of 5. It's for ages 16 and up. Adult fans of Harry Potter, people who like the Crimes of Grindelwald type storyline, only done in America instead of the UK or whatever. Alternate history readers will like the book for what it is. And so when you see that, and I think it's also out in trade soon, or maybe this month it was listed as a trade collection, so you might want to check that out. Again, it's called Machine Gun Wizards. Our next book is Midnight Sky, number 3, $3.99. About a month ago, I did an interview with the artist on this book, Scott Van Domelen. We talked about an hour on this book, and this is the newest issue. Publisher is Scout Comics, written by James Pruitt. Scott did the art. Ilaria Fella did the coloring work rather. Genre is science fiction. And, we're sitting here in a post-apocalyptic world that may or may not have had an alien invasion. It's still not clear. But, we learn in this issue more about the abilities of the son of the family we're following, who is one of the aliens, and of their history as a family in relation to other events. At the end of the second issue, he was thrown into a pit and with a white Bengal tiger. And as you can see, the tiger's about to chomp him. And the tiger gets him in the arm and doesn't kill him. The tooth actually breaks off in his arm. The guy who threw him in the pit is like, what the hell? The mother hits him with an electrified cane and then throws the cane to him to defend himself. Whoops. And I'm not going to say what happens next. Whoop. Sorry about that, folks. We'll stop that for a second here. There we go. And so that's what that is. And so far we're seeing, I'll share it with you again in a second here. My computer's getting a little bit wonky because getting people hitting me with notes from something else. I apologize. Let me get that shared up again here. There we go. But yeah, that's the book for that. I still think it's a pretty good book. Still solid work. Story's taking time to develop, and I think it might be 6 issues before we really get sinking into it. But that's okay. It ends on a good cliffhanger for serialized what's going on, because it tells a little bit about more history about the mother and another person who's actually a family member, extended family member, comes in and there's a confrontation at the end. So I can't say any more than that right now. But if you like science fiction, if you like the post-apocalyptic invasion, Walking Dead type storylines, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, V, that sort of thing, book should be to your liking. Our next book is The Question, The Death of Vic Sage #1. Publisher is DC Comics, part of their new Black Label line of oversized comics. For some reason, I forgot to put the price on this. Publishers, like I said, DC, Black Label. Writer is Jeff Lemire. The penciler is Dennis Cowan. The inker is Bill Sienkiewicz. That is Sienkiewicz, not Sinkiewicz. Colorist is Chris Sotomayor. Letter is Willie Schubert. The cover, which is this one that I'm showing is a variant cover, is by Jeff Lemire. The regular one is done by Dennis Cowan and Sienkiewicz. And for some reason, my store gave me the variant cover. I don't remember asking for the variant cover, but that's what I got. And when I first saw it, I didn't think of it as a variant, thinking of it as Jeff's art because it is similar in style to Dennis's. So I thought I just, at a quick glance when I was getting him through the book, getting out of the store, I just went ahead and got it and didn't think anything of it. The genre is crime noir, fantasy. No, I don't consider it superhero per se. I know The Question is part of the DC superhero universe, but I consider this more of a fantasy thing than a superhero. I always have about The Question. What it's about. Vic Sage, investigative journalist, fights crime and corruption in Hub City as The Question, a tough street vigilante. For him, the world is a matter of absolute morality, and force must be used to enforce the right. But what happens when he uncovers a mystery so bizarre that it makes him question everything he knows? What happens when he is standing over his own grave? And this is a mature reader's book. And I will, hold on a second. I'll be right back. I wanted to go get the book and find the price of it real quick. And this is the book. Again, another oversized book, very much like the back issue, about the same overall size. And it's ages 7. It's a Black Label. 17 plus $6.99. And I think it's 40 pages, 48 pages or something in this particular issue. Again, sorry about the reflection on there. See if we can get a better, there you go. But, it's definitely for mature readers. One of the earliest parts of the story, he's beating up government official, city official, who's involved in messing around with girls and hookers, little girls, young underage girls, and he's beating up the bodyguards in this scene, and then he confronts the guy and takes a picture of him and puts it up for people to see on the internet and exposes him. Now, you notice that there's a little bit of a blocked out spot there. That's because there's foul language in there, and I'm getting used to the censoring of content in case for the COPPA rules that we mentioned earlier in the questions earlier on in the show. That's why that's there. But I think you can kind of figure out. Well, you can't because it's too small. But you basically screw you and blah blah blah. Only it's the F word. But anyway, but yeah, it's got that kind of language in it, and there's other stuff in there that makes it definitely mature reader material. So nobody under the age of 17 should be reading it necessarily without parental permission, supervision. Our next book. Whoops, pardon me. I meant to do something else first. I gave it 4 out of 5, mostly because it's been so long since I've seen Dennis Cowan's work, and I'm really happy to see it. The coloring is, pretty good by Sotomayor. Being digital, it's a little bit different than what I'm used to for Cowan and Sienkiewicz, but it works all right. Storyline, though, basically he exposes the person to the public, and that gets him in kind of hot water with some other people that are other government officials, and one of his friends, who's the sister of the mayor, who's corrupt, gets in trouble, and a few other things go on into the lead into the first issue. And I don't know how many issues this is going to be. I think it's the first of 4, if I'm not mistaken. But for $6.99, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. It's not perfect. That's why it gets a 4 out of 5. But for not having seen Cowan in a long time, I was pretty happy with it. Now we can get on to the next one. And that is The Quiet Kind one-shot. $5.99, 56-page story. Publisher is Dark Horse. The writer is Chuck Brown, who is one of our local creators here in Columbia, South Carolina. The artist, there's 2 artists, Jeremy Treese and Kelly Williams. The first story is 48 pages. That is by Jeremy, and then there's a backup story by Kelly. Jeremy is from Flint, so all you fans out there from the Flint or from Michigan out there, Varian Grant, Zim, Ted Davies, others who might be watching. I know you guys are friends with him. Check it out if you haven't already. This book came out a little while ago, but I just recently got around to reading it. Letter is Adam Pruitt. Cover art's Michael Cho. The genre is urban fantasy. The story is about a young boy who was bullied at school, and he's given the power to shape reality by the mythological entity, the fox, and is thrust into a multi-dimensional adventure where the very sake of the existence of where the very existence of the universe is at stake. Trying to speak too fast. My apologies. I recommend it for ages 14 and up. It's another 4-star rating out of 5. And this is Jeremy's art. And this is The Fox and the Serpent, where he's already given the boy the power to potentially shape reality and shape the universe, and kind of an experiment. And of course, the fox is sort of the trickster, the chaos type thing that he's doing. And so there's that, and it's a very interesting, fun story. I don't want to get into the all the dynamics of it, but if you want to read a book that's for good teenage story with the kid getting picked on, and then what does he do when he has the power and doesn't have the power and stuff like that, should be to your liking. The second part of the storyline, I'll show you the art for that, is by Kelly Williams. And this is long beforehand, and back in the early days, obviously, you got a woolly mammoth elephant here. The fox is drinking from a pool of water, and the mammoth is saying, well, "Are you lost, fox?" "No, I'm having a drink." "No, you're most certainly lost. This is meant for the big people. Made for us. You go down, drink from the water below." And the fox challenges him and says, well, why am I not worthy to drink from these waters? What makes me unworthy? And it's a good little 8-page story about different things and there. And I thought that was a really good backup story. John says he has to leave. And yes, he does have another theatrical showtime opening tomorrow for Frosty. And so a good night's rest is in order. Yes, definitely, because you got to go do your day job and then you got the other performance to give. Have good luck on your show, and we will catch up with you later. Thanks for watching, John. Mm-hmm. Oh. Our next book is Shapes, number 1, $3.99. K Pictures Publishing is the publisher. Creator is Rick Recadal. Writers are Jason Brubaker and Rick Recadal. Artist is Jason Brubaker. The colorist is Brubaker and Adrian Amartafio. I hope I didn't slaughter your last name there, Adrian. The letterer is Simon Bowland. The genre is urban fantasy video game type storyline. What it's about is Chaz's 13th birthday is a disaster. He's bullied at school, his phone is hacked, and he can't get back onto the video game that he just almost defeated. But things are about to get a whole lot worse when he gets transported into the video game, and now he really has to beat the game to survive. I give it a 3 out of 5, and the reason I give it 3 out of 5 is because, kind of like how Heart Attack was kind of pretty obviously derivative of X-Men, and this is very derivative of Tron and Ready Player One. There's the birthday scene. He gets a little ring type device that's from his dad, who's long gone, missing, busy somewhere else, and that's kind of what helps transport him into the other dimension. Different things in the storyline. It's very clear that they're going for that whole Tron, Matrix, Ready Player One thing, and we've seen that done quite a bit lately. So I'm a little. It's middle ground. It has potential to go a lot better. It's not bad for what it is so far. So I give it a 3 out of 5. But we'll look at it a little bit more. Mm-hmm. The artwork. This is right after he got his phone taken away in class. Mm-hmm. And, I think it's funny. Why the school news would tell you that if you encounter a digital black hole in the game, make sure you log off immediately, because it could wipe your account attached to your name and, including email and linked bank accounts. Okay. Interesting, but yeah. But anyway, it's interesting. And what you see changing there, on the right-hand side, where it goes yellow and the face is kind of showing, he's seeing an entity from the video game, basically, that nobody else can see because his mind's somehow attached to it from when he was in the game. Mm-hmm. Playing the game before he actually got the present. And this is where he gets the ring from his dad. And all of a sudden, here comes another one of the creatures from the other dimension, from this video game dimension. And ultimately, at the end of the issue, he gets sucked in to the other dimension, and his female friend, that was the person on the cover with him, who's got his phone and was hacking his phone, or trying to fix his phone after it got hacked into. Mm-hmm. and wouldn't work. She watches him get sucked into the video game, and then he's right there on the phone at the end of the on the screen. Hey, I'm over here. I'm trapped, and that's where they leave it at the first end of the first issue. That would be the one in the red there. It's a cool, like I said, it's a fun little book for what it is. Fun little book for what it is, and it's certainly worth the $4 for what you're getting. But you got to know what you're looking at, and what you're looking at is something that's very clearly influenced by Tron and Matrix and Ready Player One. So if you're into that, thumbs up. If you're not, that's not your thing, you or you're tired of that sort of thing, this book probably won't be for you in that respect. Our next book is John Carpenter's Tales of Science Fiction, Redhead #1, $3.99. Publisher is Storm King Comics. The writer is Dwayne Swerzinski. The artist is Jason Felix. The letterer is Janice Chang. The cover art is by Tim Bradstreet. The genre is SF horror. There's a lot of John Carpenter's Tales of Science Fiction books. This just happens to be one of the storylines called Redhead. It's a 5-issue miniseries. This is issue 1 of 5. What it's about is Marnie Young is a young executive assistant living in San Diego. One night, without warning, she suffers a massive seizure. 2 days later, she wakes up in a hospital room to find 17 doctors and nurses lying down on the floor with blood splattered everywhere. She soon discovers the truth. She has become lethal, and everyone that comes within 3 feet of her dies instantly. This is sure going to put a cramp on her dating life if she had one. That's why this is their own blog a little bit there. Is there a cure? Can anyone get close enough to find out? Recommended for 17 and up and fans of shock horror. And part of the reason that is it's been there, done that type storyline. I didn't realize that's what the story was when I got it. When I ordered it, I thought it would be something a little bit different than that. It's kind of weird, but it's not bad. Again, it's got potential, very much like Shapes. I'm just not. I happen to like the art by Jason Brubaker a little bit better than the art by Jason Felix in this one. So we're going to take a quick look at the art there. It looks like digital painting type stuff. In this case, she's being chased and left by being bombed by a drone because people are threatened by her. Whatever's caused her to have this ability to, you come within 3 feet of her, your head explodes or whatever. It's kind of a weird thing. I'm hoping it develops into something more than it is, but it's not too bad. Like I said, it's about middle of the road comic for what's on the market these days. So I gave it a 3 out of 5. Let's see. Yep. Pardon me. Wasn't ready for that yet. But that is the last of our reviews for this issue or this episode of the program. Overall, a little bit above average this week. The lowest ones were average comics. Nothing wrong with them. I've certainly read worse. But the stuff I'd really recommend is probably the back issue in the question. And, hold on a second. What's going on here? Computer's being silly again. The other thing I would definitely recommend would be the quiet kind. I recommend that one as well. The most out of the ones I reviewed tonight. So let me close that one down again. Okay. And that closes reviews for tonight. Now, quickly, this is leading into the last week of my year-end holiday sale. Commissions, original sketches, art books, poster prints, and much, much more. It goes through December 12th, which would be a week from today. Unfortunately, I'm not going to have a show next week on the 12th. I will explain that why in just a little bit. But where you get stuff online, this is some of the stuff that's available again. Wingman, Art of Lewis Bright Raven Volume 1. Normal price is $10 plus shipping. It's $7 or $15 with a personal sketch inside the book plus the shipping. Walking Dead Michonne print. Normally they're $15 and $20. They're down to $10 and $15 plus shipping. Normal prices for the Dino Head and Chinese Dragon prints are $10 and $15. They're down to $5 and $10. These prints are limited to only 25 copies. Akira, Thor, and Zombie, again, normally 15 and 20 down to 5 and 10, plus shipping, limited to 25 copies. Kirk McCoy, T-Rex print, normally 10 to 15, depending on the size, only $5 or $10 with shipping. And you can pay me by PayPal, lewisbrightраven.com, lewisbrightраven at yahoo.com, or quothravenlbr72 at gmail.com. And if you want to see more on this, you can go to www.ebay.com/user/lewisbrightraven, facebook.com/lewis.brightraven, or quothravenlbr72 at gmail.com. Subject holiday sale. I haven't had a chance to get more into the commissions and other things this year because of going on with other things. What's been going on with my life the past week. I don't know if you guys knew, but my computer, the power supply unit died on my computer that I'm doing the podcast on, so I had to wait. I lost a couple of days there of getting work done. Waiting for that. I also lost a whole day's worth of work yesterday. Getting medicine from my father took 4.5 hours, 5 hours at the pharmacy on base. So I lost a whole day's worth of work there. And I lost a day's worth of work on some other stuff as well. So I lost a good 4 or 5 days worth of stuff, which is why you guys didn't see more videos and why you didn't see more coverage on the sale this past week. But the sale will end on December 12th. If you want to order a commission sketch for Christmas, best thing to do is reach me at the Lewis, quote the Raven LBR72 at gmail.com. Subject holiday sale, and inquire as to what I can do for you. And I will put that up again. You can also reach me on the Facebook and text me privately there, or you can go on eBay and order something that's already on the site. Let me check real quick if I can. We have 53 listings, and there's 5 days left on them, 5 or 6 days left, maybe 7 days on a couple of them. So there's not that much, 5 to 7 days. So, again, for what you can order off the eBay channel. So again, that's eBay channel that you can do there for, and check that out. And so that kind of closes up our show for most of the night. I want to thank people for watching, but before we head out, I want to let you guys know what our schedule is for the rest of the season. And this is it. Next week, our guest will be Armand Villavert Jr., artist for Gladstone School for World Conquerors. We will be discussing that book and the spin-off series, Kid Nefarious. And we'll be giving a giveaway of Kid Nefarious. I got some copies of that issue. It's a one-shot book. We'll talk about that. And he doesn't do the work for Kid Nefarious. Armand doesn't. That's another creator, Scott Weldon, if I remember correctly. I'm going to see if I can get some other people involved in getting into the show next week as well. But definitely our lead guest will be Armand, barring any unforeseen circumstances. That's next week, Wednesday instead of Thursday, December 11th. That will be also closing up shop for the year on the holiday sale. December 18th, which will be the following Wednesday, will be Star Wars night. And the reason we're doing Star Wars, of course, is because the 20th will be when Rise of Skywalker for the movie will be coming out on the 20th. And I will not be here on Thursday next week because on the 19th, there's a special showing at the Dutch Fork Theater in Columbia that you have to go to Scratch and Spin Comics on 12th Street, I think it is, across the street from Zesto's in Triangle City, Columbia. They might still have some ticket sales. You only can get the tickets from Scratch and Spin. But I will be there on that night, the 19th, for that event. So we'll talk about everything Star Wars on the 18th, the night before. We'll have a special Saturday edition on 21st, where the topic will be wrestling, professional wrestling, because people have been asking me about wrestling quite a bit, and I haven't talked about it on the show. So we'll do a show dedicated to the wrestling on the 21st. On December 26th, which is the next Thursday, which is our normal day of viewing, it'll be the day after Christmas, and we'll talk about who's got the swag, and I'll show you guys what I got for Christmas, and you guys can come online and show me what you got for yours. And then on Saturday, the 28th of December, we'll do our year-end special, where I'll talk about what I think the best comics of the year were that I got to read, and what I think of what to expect in 2020 and stuff like that. So that's what we'll do then. Sorry, folks, I'm just trying to get everything set up on this silly machine. And until then, I want to thank you once again for watching the show, and we will see you next week on the 11th with Armand, and we'll talk about that Gladstone School for World Conquerors. So until then, have a good week. See you next time.